6:30, we'll call the national meeting for the Louisville City Council to order. City Manager?
So, Mayor Council, tonight we have a pretty full workshop schedule. We'd like to start first with information on a proposed Atlas project. I know representatives of Atlas are here, but David's going to give you an update on this project.
Good evening. Staff has been talking with Atlas Energy for several months now about this project. It runs on FM 407 down Summit Avenue, College Street, and then down Garden Ridge Boulevard into Flower Mound. So it's going to affect quite a bit of our city, including some single-family residential neighborhood. So we thought we wanted to give you an overview of the project. The project is a 12-inch steel high-pressure gas main. It is distribution, and it is going to help with capacity issues here in Louisville, so it does have a positive impact on our population. And again, it affects College Street, Summit Avenue, FM 407, and Garden Ridge Boulevard. This is just a high elevation look at the total route starting at 407 on the top and then going down into Flower Mound at the very bottom of the map. Atlas Energy selected the route for several reasons. Number one, it's probably one of the shortest routes between the two endpoints. As everyone is aware, there's a high voltage transmission electric line on Garden Ridge Boulevard, and those high voltage lines can have a detrimental effect on a steel gas main underground in the adjacency of that high power line. So what Atlas Energy has attempted to do is keep their 12-inch steel gas main away from those high voltage power lines, so they avoided Garden Ridge Boulevard north of College Street. And of course, they've tried to minimize any conflicts and interaction with city utilities. They're still looking at the area on Garden Ridge Boulevard south of College. There are quite a few city utilities in that area, and so they have not settled on an exact location within the right-of-way there south of College Street. Again, this is a new gas main. It's not a replacement, and it's intended to increase capacity because of the increasing demand. This project will be installed completely within the city right-of-way. The intended construction date is sometime in early 2019, spring of 2019, and it will take roughly 6 months to complete the line all the way through Louisville. Moving forward, staff will have an opportunity to review the final construction drawings before they go to construction, and we'll be able to have some input. We'll also issue a right-of-way permit for this project, and our utility franchise inspector will be watching them out in the field. Atlas Energy will replace sidewalk and street pavement that's disturbed, and whenever they replace pavement, it will be ADA compliant, including any disturbed sidewalk ramps or anything of that nature. There are some mailboxes on College Street that may have to be temporarily removed, and if they remove them, they'll be replaced, of course. And then in the interim, they will provide temporary mail receptacles during construction. There are a couple of trees that are within the right-of-way. I'll make just sort of a blanket statement at this point. The majority of this line is going to be bored. There'll be very little open cut. They'll have to have an open cut where they have their boring receiving pits. So there will be some open cut and some surface disruption. But for the most part, it's going to be bored. So we expect very minimal effect on trees and surface. And one of the things we wanted to mention is, as we know, whenever we have one of these markers sticking out of the ground, and in this case, protection testing stations. Atmos is committed to working with the city staff on the design and location of those, so they'll be as minimal as possible, and hopefully not much of an eyesore. The next several slides are just a little bit zoom in on the route. They'll be on the south side of FM 407 and then along the west side of Summit. Continuing down Summit, they're staying on the west side. And then when you get down here by this subdivision, there is a screening wall. So they'll be on the outside of the screening wall, between the screening wall and the street. Same thing on Summit. Whoops. You can see then when they get down to College Street, they make a turn to the west, and then they're on the north side of College Street. I wanted to take just a moment while we're on College Street and zoom in on the street view so you can kind of see where they're going to be going. This is the north side of College Street. We anticipate they're going to be underneath the back of the sidewalk, maybe just behind the sidewalk. And again, this is going to be, this project will be bored. There will be a periodic bore pit and a receiving pit, especially on College Street with it being curved. You can only bore for so long before you have to come back up again.
How much space does that take, David? You have that pit.
I'm sorry?
How much space does that take up?
I would imagine the bore pits, and maybe someone from Atmos can help me out here, but for a project like this, I would imagine the bore pits are probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 feet wide.
They're saying 3 feet.
3 feet?
3 feet?
Okay, good. Yeah, and this line is, in an earlier slide, it showed that the line was going to be a minimum of 3 feet deep, but in general, these gas mains are a little bit less deep than city utilities, so it's easier for them to have a narrower pit. If you look down the street, you can see there's some trees that are fairly close to the right-of-way. Trees that are further away from the right-of-way, like this one, obviously should not be impacted at all. Whenever we have a tree like this that's close to the right-of-way, there is a possibility of some impact at that location. Even when you bore, you don't always know what's underground, and it's possible they could hit a root with the bore, or because that particular tree is so close, if they're putting a bore pit anywhere near that area, they're probably going to have some root loss there on that tree. So this is the kind of thing that we're going to have to be watching for as we review the plans and as our inspectors out in the field working with Atmos Energy.
What about parking along the street? How's that going to be affected?
Yeah, all the work is going to be done from the street on this project. So as they move along, they will have to have some lane closures. And of course, that means that, for a period of time, that area where the lanes are closed, won't have any parking. And it kind of goes back to the mailbox discussion. At that point, people may have to have some temporary mail receptacles while they're in the area.
Where are you going to place those? Since the Postal Service has to come across that, where would you put them? The Postal Service couldn't cut across.
No. Jan.
I would be happy to answer that question, yes, thank you. What we've done in the past with the banks of mailboxes, they are purchased and they're placed in a near proximity of the homes. And of course, we work through the city engineering department on that. So they're purchased, placed, they're placed in concrete, and the homeowners receive keys, they're distributed, and we work out the arrangements with the postmaster. Beginning a certain date, they know to deliver mail to that box, and we notify them when we stop delivering mail to that box.
So they grouped in a location? notification?
They're very similar to what you see in some subdivisions. They're a large box with little post office boxes, and depending on the number that we need, that will determine, the size of the box.
And how much notice will the neighbors have before you begin work?
Would you like to talk about that, Nick?
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
I'd be more than happy to. So initially, what our expectation is that the residents will begin notification as soon as, if we've got the green light from the city to start our SUS study, we will begin notifications at that time, and we will advise the residents that we are looking at the process of installing a new natural gas line, and that they will see surveyors in their area. After that, when they've completed the plans for the process, then there will be another notification advising the residents, and it will be a full letter. It will advise them of the work that we're doing, the process, the amount of time that it will take. They will also receive a map of the project. They will also be directed to a website that houses the project. So we've got a new process that's housing all of our replacement and infrastructure projects. So we'll direct them to the website. So they will continuously get information from us, as well as we will know, every week we will provide updates to the city as to what our process is.
What's your goal for lead time between notification and the disruption? Whatever that happens to be. Do you have a goal or a window that you try and hit?
Okay, I'm gonna ask Alan Hawkins to answer that question.
So our hope is to start in spring 18, so we would probably start that notification, 19, I'm sorry. But we would probably start mailing the letters, doing the SUS study, and making customer contact probably towards the end of this year, so that we would have plenty of time to notify those people as well, because it's gonna be hard catching people at home, so we'll have to go back and make multiple trips. But we would start that as soon as we had to, as soon as we could start the SUS study, then we would start notifying customers and then going back and giving them more detailed information as we had it available.
Would you intend to hold a public meeting for residents to come and chat, or?
It's not been our practice. Normally what we do is we have a designated right-of-way agent who, after the sub-utility study and each of the homeowners are identified, we have physical names and addresses for everyone in the home. And usually our right-of-way agents go to the homes specifically and have a discussion with them about the work and how it's going to be affecting the property.
What's the total project time? I know you can't break it down.
Total project time.
Estimated.
Roughly 6 months to complete. Once we start the once we go to construction,
Okay.
then it would take us roughly 6 months to finish that, and that's allowing for weather and things that may slow us down.
Will there be any other disruption to other service providers, like waste management?
We certainly hope not, but we do have a good working relationship with Waste Management, and we've been in contact on other projects, we've been in contact with their field representatives, and we give them a notification of when we would be disrupting trash pickup. And those are some of the things that we do plan for: trash, mail, bulk trash pickup. We even work with the first responders to notify them of when we would be doing the work and if there would be any obstruction for the traffic, so that they know, like on a specific day, if we've got traffic blocked, and we have people on site who were able to move any barricades to allow first responders access to residents' homes.
One thing we might talk about also is, when you do a project like this that's a bore, it's not unusual to hit utility service lines, water and sewer, and which is one of the reasons we have an inspector out there, while they're doing their work, because if that happens, then of course our inspector can immediately contact public services or whomever if they need to, and let them know and make arrangements to get those services back in place.
And to that, if you don't mind, I'd like to dovetail on that. We have our own Atmos Energy employees that will be on site inspecting the work, as well as third-party inspectors that we're always monitoring our work. And in previous projects, we have made arrangements with plumbers and other utilities that might be interrupted with our work. We have them on notice that we're working in an area so that we can get someone out to make those repairs as quickly as possible so the residents are not disrupted. I think the positive of this project is that a lot of it will be taking place in the colder months, So maybe if there's some issues with irrigation, then it's not as much of an impact as if it would be a summer project.
Right, and that was an important thing to note, is that when Atmos Energy accidentally hits somebody's service line, they attempt to fix it themselves first, but we do notify public services of any outages, because we know they get the calls. And, and then if absolutely necessary, if something unusual comes up, then of course our public services folks can step in and help.
And we should, before we start the bore process, we should pothole every utility and identify where it's at and keep it exposed during the bore process so that we know when we're crossing those utilities as well.
David, I know we're a little short on time. Would you put that map, that picture back up for a moment?
The map or the,
The close-up, the one you had, what previous, the one you took down. The one you.
Street
segued
view,
to.
street, the street view.
That's fine, put that, leave that one up, I'll work from that one. So along all of the stretch of College, there's a median. Why was this placed on one side of the street rather than in the median?
well, we actually have a utility line there, in the median, and there's some pretty sizable trees out there, back that street view. You can see, I mean, we've got a row of pretty large trees out there, and there definitely would be some loss of trees, if they went in the median. I mean, it would just be unavoidable.
So that brings me to my second question, and you picked a good example. What happens if within the next year or two, this tree begins to decline and die, which obviously is mature?
The city tree.
No, the one that's in the front yard there.
Would that tree not fall within the city right of way?
That looks
It's
like it.
close, it's probably just outside, is my guess.
To be honest with you, I'd have to follow up with our right-of-way group as to how those things are handled. Again, in my perspective, it's city right-of-way, so we would follow any of the right-of-way ordinances that you have.
And Atmos is, it's on another slide, but Atmos is committed to following our tree protection ordinance, which means that if they have to, or even inadvertently, lose a tree, that it's going to be replaced.
So I guess my question also includes, what's the timeline? What's the warranty on that?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, I know what we do on city projects, but we do that just because it's the right thing to do.
I'd like to know.
I don't think we've gotten to that place yet, but
No, but I mean, I think if something happens within the first year to 2 years after we come in and put this line in, working with our right-of-way department and our claims department, we can come to a resolution for that. That was their true.
I guess I'd like to see some written assurance of that.
Continue to work with Atmos and see where we can go with that. I know on city projects, anytime we're working in a neighborhood, we usually put a 1 to 2 year guarantee on the trees.
Have you done that with other cities that you've done this type of project in?
that's a good question. This type of project is, I would say, is a little new for us.
To my knowledge.
The other side of that is, and we're just as concerned for the city, almost as concerned as you are. And just a few years ago, we had a project that we were planting trees in various communities, and I allocated some 81 trees to Louisville that were planted at the Alvin Turner Park, and I believe it's called Lake Park. So please know our commitment to you as far as your trees and the value of the trees in your community. I'm here. I am here, and I think we've got a very close relationship, and certainly we want to work through any issues. So we're your partner. You're our partner. We're your partner. We're here committed to you. Our goal is to provide safe, delivered natural gas to your community. And so to that, we want to make every aspect of that a pleasant experience for the city.
So Councilman, we'll go back and work with Jan on that issue and see if we can get that resolved.
My concern is for homeowners, and then I'll finish with this statement. If you lose that tree, the other side of that yard is gonna look like the right-hand side, because you'll lose the shade of the grass. So they're not only gonna lose the tree, they'll lose their lawn.
So Jan will follow up with you
We'll
on
work on
that
that.
issue.
run through this quickly. As you can see, it continues on the north side of College, and then we do hit the median going down Garden Ridge, south of College. That's a relatively small median, and there's not a lot of vegetation other than grass and some shrubs. And it just continues down the median in a flower mound. I'm sure some of you have heard about the project. It's actually, I think it's probably just wrapping up or getting close to being finished in Carrollton. The main takeaway on this is that that project was actually kind of a different type of project, and it had a lot of differences from what they're proposing on this line. We wouldn't expect to have those same problems on this line, at least not nearly to the extent that happened in Carrollton. In Carrollton, it was an existing easement that went through people's personal private property, and that easement had been there for 50 or 60 years. And so, over the years, things got placed there that ended up having to be removed. So, because this is in the right of way, because it's mostly board, we shouldn't have those problems. We've already covered all the contact, but they are going to have a significant public contact, and we will have we will be reviewing and having some input on their plans. One other thing we added in here at the last minute, just last week, we met with Atlas Energy over a different line that they're proposing. I think it's about at the same stage, very early. But this line, similar to the Carrollton line, is within an existing easement. I don't have a lot of information on this yet because we just met last week and we're just starting to pull together the information from Atlas, and they're going to be providing a lot more information as they move forward. Sorry about the map. This is about as good as we can get on a last-minute deal. But the line, the second line that we're talking about here this evening is a 12-inch transmission line. Runs on the west side of I-35, somewhat parallel. Starts just south of FM 407 and then ends just south of Garden Ridge Boulevard. And as you can see, it does have some impact to some single-family residential up here on the north end. Again, we just met with them last Tuesday for the first time about this line, so we're just learning about it. Again, this will be more similar to the Carrollton project than what the other line is. This will be a combination of bore and open cut, and that's still to be determined how much and where. This is going to be a gas main replacement as opposed to a brand new line. They're just simply replacing an old line. There will be some residential lots on Oriole, one on Bogart, one on Pinehurst, and then several lots on Valley Duff that will be impacted by this construction. Just looking at aerial photos, it appears there will be some mature trees and at least one accessory building that could be impacted. And again, we'll figure that out as we move forward. We haven't seen a lot of detail on this yet. Once Atlas Energy has completed their survey, we'll know a lot more on this. But we wanted to sneak this into the slide presentation this evening, just to get this on your radar screen, because I'm sure that once Atlas Energy sends out their letter informing the residents about the surveying, that there could be some phone calls. So we just wanted to kind of end with this and let you know that we do have this other line coming up, and we'll be passing information along on it also.
What's the time frame on that?
This one, the letters will be going out, probably within the next 2 weeks, and then the sub-utility study will begin. And then after that, the route will be, the exact route will be determined. So I think we're looking at spring for this one as well.
So similar timing?
Yes. We have a lot of moving parts right now. The biggest purpose in presenting this right now is that we mostly want to keep you ahead of our communications.
We appreciate it.
Well, and we appreciate the partnership. So once the letters are sent, and, you know, sometimes residents will call, they'll call your office, they'll call their city council member, and they want the information. So we most certainly want to be able to provide you with the information. We don't ever want you to say we don't know. I'm more than happy, Mr. Solomon has copies of the map as well as the letter. And you certainly are welcome to send that to the council members so that they have their own individual copies if they would like to have that, should they get some phone calls.
And council will be back when we have more details on the second line. We'll come back and workshop with you again.
Yes, that will be an ongoing process, as we move forward with the project. We will have continued meetings with your engineering department, and however you would like for us to continue the communications with council, we will continue to be plugged in with you until we complete the project.
Appreciate it.
But thank you very much.
Mayor, we only have about 5 minutes for questions on agenda.
Okay. Will we come back to this, or are we through with this part of it?
We're through with this first presentation. We have 2 more. We'll come back to that.
Okay, let's walk through the agenda right now. Item 1, public hearing. Item 2, public hearing. Anybody got the consent agenda? Does anybody need to pull anything on that? Okay. Then we're down to the regular hearings, item 9. Okay, item 10. And item 11. If there's nothing else, do you have anything else, City Manager?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock in the council chambers. Who's doing it? 7 o'clock, we'll call tonight's meeting of the Louisville City Council to order. First item of business is the invocation given by Councilman Gilmore, followed by the pledge to the American and Texas flags by Councilman Ferguson.
Please join me for a moment of contemplation. Amen.
Please join me in the pledges to our flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, I want to start off with just a little bit of housekeeping here. We have a new, I don't know what we call it, Julie, what do we call it?
Agenda and voting.
A new voting process that we're gonna have. It's more electronic, and so you will see things up on the display screens. It's gonna be new to us. Most of us just saw it today after 3 o'clock. So it's, I will make a few mistakes, I know. So just bear with us, and hopefully it'll make it easier to follow in the future.
Public hearing number 1. Consideration of an ordinance granting a special use permit for an expansion of recreational vehicle display, sales, and repair facility and 2 associated variances on 13.4232 acres located at 498 East State Highway 121. The SUP request is for the expansion of National Indoor RV to construct a 49,990 square foot building. The 2 variance requests are 1. 6 trees along the northern property line in lieu of 3 tree islands on a southern portion of the property, And 2, an 8-foot tubular steel fence along the southern property line with irrigation and planting of a hedge to be 8 feet tall at full growth in lieu of a masonry screening wall. P&Z recommended approval by a vote of 6-0. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the ordinance and 2 variances as set forth in the caption.
Do we have any speakers on this?
The first one is Hal Kendrick. Mr. Kendrick, if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Hal Kendrick, 498 East Highway 121, Louisville. I represent National Indoor RV Centers and just want to express appreciation to the council for consideration of this. We've been a long-term citizen of Louisville. We think the use is consistent with other uses in the area. Our customers require, they're high-end RV purchasers, they require a nice facility, and we're committed to make it a nice campus facility type destination for our customers, which come in from not only all over the Metroplex and not only all over the United States, but internationally as well. And I'm available for any questions as well. I just want to say thanks.
Okay, thank you. No, that's it? Okay. Do we have any questions of the council? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do I need to follow here, Julie, or y'all have this?
Yes, you can call for the vote, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Ooh, look at that. There it is.
Wow.
Okay. Neil,
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
we have a motion and a second.
You can call for the vote now, Mayor.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I apologize.
I can't hear you.
No discussion, she's gotta read it.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
This is an ordinance of the Louisville City Council amending the zoning ordinance by granting a special use permit for an expansion of a recreational vehicle display sales, outdoor, and repair facility on approximately 13.4232 acres, legally described as Lot 1R Block A, National Indoor Storage Edition, and Lot 1 Block A, Auto Master Edition, located at 498 East State Highway 121 Business and Zone General Business District and Light Industrial District, providing for repealer, severability, penalty, and an effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Can I get you all to vote on your screens, please?
I don't have a vote though.
Don't have a vote, but
I would've. Now I will.
That's it. I'm abstaining now.
Public hearing number 2, consideration of a resolution authorizing the adoption of the CDBG 2018 Annual Action Plan and amendment to the 2015 Alvin Turner Senior Park Project. Authorization for the city manager to submit the plan to HUD and acknowledgement of receipt of the recommended fiscal year 2018-2019 City Social Service Agency Fund budget of $170,000 from the CDBG Advisory Committee. At their June 19, 2018 meeting, the CDBG Advisory Committee recommended a draft budget which has been incorporated into the action plan. The plan was made available for a 30-day public comment period. The amendment to the Turner Senior Park project is required to change the scope of the park's improvements to allow for the installation of exercise and recreational equipment. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the resolution, authorize the action, and acknowledge the item as set forth in the caption.
Okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close. Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And vote. Okay. Okay. Julie?
The next item on the agenda is a visitor citizen forum.
Wait.
Oh, I apologize.
Back up.
So we'll need a motion.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. Have a motion. And a second? Okay. Any discussion? Counselor, do you need to talk now? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say, vote, excuse me. Okay, motion passes.
Okay, we'll try visitors now. Visitor Citizen Forum. At this time, any person with business before the council not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the council. No formal action can be taken on these items at this meeting. We have one speaker.
Okay.
Kimberly Parday. Ma'am, if you can state your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, ma'am. Kimberly Party, 1714 Clarendon Drive, Louisville.
Hi, Amber Bagwell, 3001 Knox Street, Suite 200, Dallas, Texas, 75205.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank y'all. Good evening, everybody. We appreciate y'all letting us come in and talk about what we're going to bring up. I am the marketing chair for the Alzheimer's Association for Denton County, and I do live here in Louisville. I also work with a company called Place for Mom, where we partner with all the memory cares throughout the county. And I wanted to see if we could propose the city, turning the city purple. And I'm going to divert over to Amber so she can kind of tell you how other cities have done that with us to recognize Alzheimer's. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kimberly. Thank you guys for having us here today. So Alzheimer's, of course, is an epidemic that's just getting stronger. Unfortunately, as we go, it's actually 1 in every 3 seniors who pass have a form of Alzheimer's or other form of dementia. It's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States as well, with over 5 million Americans living with it currently. And one every 65 seconds or so is actually diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So it's something that we're really trying to build awareness, raise funds to help with research to hopefully stall, but definitely eventually have a world without Alzheimer's. Part of the way we are able to do that is through some of our fundraising events, and our largest is the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So we do have our walk in Denton County that's going to be held on September 29th. We have had many cities previously and that are coming up that will be turning purple in honor of Alzheimer's and those that are suffering with Alzheimer's as a way to build awareness. For instance, we've had Dallas just recently in June turn purple for us. We had the Omni Hotel have our, hashtag end alls, yes, and alls.org. Plus we had Reunion Tower turn purple. We had KPMG turn purple. Probably about 7, 8 buildings in downtown Dallas turn purple. But also we had community leaders. We had volunteers, of course. We had employees as well as town squares, town halls, plazas turn purple. Any other buildings or even businesses that had the digital signs that have the capabilities to change out, do some PSAs, things like that. So that's what we're asking, is to help build awareness just by encouraging people to wear purple, by doing what you can as a city to turn purple. And we'd be, of course, willing to help you guys out with anything that might require, but that's what we're here to ask for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we do have some handouts for you.
I didn't know who to give these to.
Could you
Yeah, that'll work.
get some additional information? I'm sorry, Mayor.
No problem.
That's our 5 minutes? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers we have for citizens.
Okay.
Next item is consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so request. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card must be filled out and submitted to the city secretary. Mayor, I have no cards.
Okay. Have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Okay.
Second.
For the second now.
Yeah, move what?
Okay. Bob, get the second? Is there,
Okay, Mayor, we have a motion, Mayor Pro Tem Jones made the motion and Councilman Gilmore seconded the motion, so it's ready for a vote.
okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no, and vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're down to regular hearings.
Number 9, consideration of 3 variances to section 6-123B, 6-144, and 4-28, 108.5A for KAI office development located at 802 North Stemmons Freeway. A construction company has been located in an existing legal non-conforming building and is proposing improvements to accommodate fire safety, access, and outside storage. 3 variances are requested. 1, to allow outside storage to be screened with live screening and opaque fencing. 2, to allow the outdoor receptacle to be screened with live screening. And 3, to allow a variable width landscape buffer. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the variances as set forth in the caption above. We have Richard Lukey, Planning Director, available to address any questions.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll vote. Okay, motion passes.
Agenda item 10, consideration of a variance to section 6-91 for the Garden Ridge Trail project. The Garden Ridge Trail project was funded with an NCT COG grant which covers 80% of the estimated cost of the trail at the time the grant was applied for, with a required 20% minimum city participation. TxDOT requires the use of its specifications when there is with state funding in the project. Staff is requesting a variance to allow the use of TxDOT specifications. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the variance as set forth in the caption. David Solomon, City Engineer, is available to address any questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion. Okay, we have a motion.
And second.
It's already there?
Yeah.
I can't tell. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye and
Aye.
vote.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Agenda item 11, consideration of a variance to section 6-123B for the Thrive project. The variance will allow for trees to be planted in alternate locations than are required by the ordinance. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the variance as set forth in the caption. Tim Ippolito, Fire Marshal, is available for questions.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself on this vote because I own real property directly across the street from this facility and within 250 feet, and I'm not making any further comment that might influence the vote. I don't need to leave though, do I? All right.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, if someone would make a motion.
Mayor, you have a motion made by Councilman Gilmore and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
I see it now. Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, would you please vote?
So much quieter.
Okay, we have one abstention, all the others voted to pass it.
Agenda item 12.
It's just so quiet.
I know. Yeah,
Like it's
right?
Agenda item 12. Consideration of a resolution establishing a public hearing date for September 17th, 2018 to consider amendments to the Land Use Assumptions Water and Wastewater Capital Improvements Plan and associated capital recovery impact fees, and authorizing the issuance of notice and publication of said public hearing by the city secretary. Texas law requires a political subdivision that imposes an impact fee to review and evaluate the fees every 5 years and to conduct a public hearing prior to approval of the impact fee review and assessment of revised fees. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the resolution as set forth in the caption.
Are there any questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Troyer made a motion and Councilman Gilmore seconded the motion.
Okay. All those in favor say, vote. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Agenda item 13. Consideration of acceptance of resignation of Dr. Marie S. Burke from place number 7 on the Animal Services Advisory Committee. Declare vacancy exists and consider an appointment to place number 7. Staff has received an application for this position from Dr. Walter Legg. The recommendation is that the City Council accept the resignation, declare a vacancy, and consider an appointment as set forth in the caption.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, you have Mayor Pro Tem Jones made a motion and Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Troyer seconded the motion.
Okay. How do we know what their motion was on an appointment?
I'm sorry, their motion was to appoint Dr. Legg.
Okay. Okay. Is there any discussion?
Just one quick thing, Mr. Mayor, we want to thank Dr. Burke for her service. She's done a terrific job, and she's still volunteering with the shelter, and she actually recommended Dr. Lake.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If everyone please vote.
This is somebody.
Did everybody vote on that one? I just read it
was
wrong.
too slow.
Now everybody can vote.
Okay, now you can vote. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Agenda item 14, consideration of a resolution appointing one member to the Board of Managers of the Denko Area 911 District. At the April 16, 2018 City Council selected Jim Carter as the city's nomination for the Board of Managers. All of the nominations have now been submitted from the area cities, and the district has requested that each participating city vote for one of the candidates. The recommendation is that the City Council approve a resolution as set forth in the caption. We do have 2 speakers on this item.
Item text is incorrect currently. I'm on 13 here.
Okay.
Jim Carter is our first speaker.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jim Carter. I reside at 1005 Roadrunner Road, Bartonville, Texas. Thank you. Mayor and council, thank you very much for your nomination for me. There were 4 people nominated. I've got 6 nominations from several different cities. The other opponents only have received the city that they lived in. I handed out I wrote you a couple of weeks ago, and I duplicated that letter for you today, telling you a few things about myself. Most of them are true. And also sent my resume as well. Also attached some information about the voting. When I was up for re-election 2 years ago, there were 4 candidates running at that particular time, with each city getting 1 vote. 30 cities voted at that time. I received 27 of the 30 votes, and each of the other individuals received a vote of their city. Also, so far this year, there has been 13 cities that have voted. I gave you that, so it's 12, but 1 other city has voted, and I've received all of those votes. Again, I'm asking you for your support and vote for Denton 911. I want to thank you and the staff for your help in the new facilities that we just built adjacent to our old facility here in Louisville. And it's a magnificent facility, and I hope you visit it someday. It cost about $5 million, and we paid cash for it. And we're quite proud of that. I can tell you some things about Denco 911 if you'd like to know, but you don't really need me to tell you because you've got a very fine individual on your staff that's a member of our board, Chief McGrath. So he's got plenty of information, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you got. Thank you very much for your support, and I appreciate your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second speaker, Sue Treshmill. And I apologize, I know I mispronounced your last name.
Sue Tamel, and nobody can ever pronounce Amel. So it rhymes with my husband's first name, Amel, and it's Czechoslovakian, and they do not believe in any vowels at all. So I live at 835 Orchid Hill Lane, Copper Canyon. I'm in my 14th year as mayor, 5th year on the Denco 911 board with your Chief McGrath. And I sit next to Commissioner Carter, who has been on the board for 4 years. And I've been on the Argyle Fire District board for a decade and a half. And we cover 5 towns and 65 square miles in Denton County, including a lot of the unincorporated areas. This new facility is really unique. We know from tornadoes and other things that our emergency answering can go down. And if that happens, whether it's a fire, flood, or tornado, it's very serious if your people calling into 911 cannot reach and have a first responder dispatched. So this new facility, you could have 1 or 2 of our call centers go down, and their call takers could come immediately to this facility and start up right away, getting 911 calls from Louisville and other areas. So it's a huge backup facility for all of us. The other thing I wanted you to know, Commissioner Carter and I were at Nashville for the National Emergency Response, and we were able to hear from the 911 call takers in the county that Las Vegas is in when they started getting the calls coming in with the massacre there. They had no idea what they were going to be dealing with. 58 deaths, hundreds of people injured. They said the first calls coming in right before 10 o'clock, they were people saying, I've been trampled, my leg's broken, my arm's broken, and then calls saying my husband's been shot. I think it was interesting from the first responders' standpoint, they didn't send the fire engines to the site of the shooting. They sent the fire engines to the hospitals because they needed triage to say, your arm's broken, you can wait. You're bleeding profusely. You need to go immediately into the emergency room and see the surgery. So it was incredible. And these first responders had a hard time sharing this experience with us because their face would crack up, they'd start to cry. And for an emergency 911 response person, it's almost like a calling. They get to talk to somebody on the worst day of their life. Their husband's had a heart attack, their parent has had a stroke, their baby has quit breathing, and they handle this with such grace and proficiency and professionalism. So if you know any of them, please thank them, and I hope you will vote for Commissioner Carter too. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is any others, Shirley? Okay.
Mayor, it would be my honor to approve a resolution appointing Jim Carter to the Board of Managers of Denko Area 911 District. That is my motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any others? Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please vote. And if you're opposed, vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Mayor, would you like to do reports before we move back into finished workshop session? Or do you want to move back in and do workshop session?
We've got time to go and do the reports right now.
We do.
That we can get it over with.
If you want to. Sure.
Okay. Nika, we'll start with reports. Nothing? Nothing.
Mayor, we have our open house this coming Thursday from 6 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. We'll have some static equipment as well as tours of the police department. Everything will be set up on the Main Street side for easy access.
Okay. Are they gonna have coffee at this one like they do at the other things?
We will have some coffee and
Okay.
believe a food truck even.
Mayor, the lake is 3.4 feet below the conservation pool.
Okay, we gotta watch that, so, okay, yes, Gina.
I just wanted to remind everyone the budget workshop is this Saturday at 9 o'clock. Everyone's welcome. It'll be a great time. We'll be going over all the funds and the property tax information as well as water, sewer, all of our funds.
And where's that gonna be at?
It'll be at the community room.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Yes, Mayor, I wanted to remind all of council as well as the public that we are going to have our Clear the Shelter event on Saturday, August 18th from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Jean Carey Animal Shelter and Adoption Center. We will be waiving all pet adoption fees that day. Adoptions include sterilization, microchip, viral vaccines, rabies vaccines, heartworm testing, and 30 days of free pet insurance. So I know you guys are all looking for a new pet.
okay, ACM Ferris. Okay. Brandon?
Sir.
Mayor, I'm good.
No, sir.
City Manager? I don't have anything. Neil?
I have a few MCL grand items. Karina, who is a very well-known Venezuelan singer, will be doing a performance at the MCL Grand on August 10th. That's Saturday at 8 p.m. KLB continues its Garden Secrets class with a program on Thursday, August 16th at 6 p.m. Plant propagation is the topic. There is a Night of Soul, and I'm going to probably mess this name up, but I think it's Chemistray is how it's pronounced, Saturday, August 18th, 6 p.m. And then there is a concert coming up at the MCL Grand, and this one I will so slaughter the name that I'm not even going to try. Saturday, August 25th. Go look at the calendar and see if you can pronounce it. And then there's a LuLaRoe pop-up boutique on Sunday, August 26th. And that'll take us up through the end of the month for the time being, so I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Troyer?
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay, Counselor? City Secretary? Okay. Thanks for all the help tonight with our new system. It's, if it was, if we had another person over here that knew what they were doing, it'd be a lot better. So Officer, thank you for your service to the community. So, do you want us to go into executive session now, or?
Continue regular.
Okay, and are we gonna do the workshop first? The rest of the workshop?
The rest of the workshop.
Okay, we're gonna go into the other room, we're gonna go into a workshop first. At the end of the workshop, we'll be going into executive session. So we'll now convene in the workroom in here. Thank you. Do you wanna keep that?
Our first phase, if you recall, Several months ago, we selected a firm to assist us in creating a master communications plan for the traffic network, as well as a master traffic plan. And so you might ask yourself, what is a traffic network and why do you need one? So back in 2010, we applied for a grant, an EDC grant, that paid for the majority of what this network cost. And during that time, it was somewhat difficult because the grant was somewhat strenuous in the requirements. One of the requirements I recall was everything had to be American-made that you were purchasing. And as you can imagine, American-made electronic equipment is not always easy to come by. And so we went into this, and this was the first time we actually ever had a traffic network. And the intent or the purpose at the time was to really facilitate the ability for the traffic department to actually remote into the traffic signals to be able to do any type of configuration, so you actually didn't have to go on site to change timing, things of that nature, as well as at the time we were looking at actually video detection, if you will. When we constructed the site, that wireless site consisted of backhaul technology from a couple of different providers, all of which are now out of business as far as the product. Exalt was the link that we used. And then at the majority of the intersections, due to price constraints, we ended up with Mercury GE radios, which were, and when you're looking at the bandwidth needed to actually stream video back, it really does not supply it. It would allow them to communicate to the signal, but again, you couldn't actually get that video back. So when we look at this right now, we're in a situation where we have a network that's unsupported as far as the equipment, and quite frankly, it's not robust enough for the current needs, much less future needs. So with that, what I would like to do, I would like to introduce Darren York. He's with Kinley Horn. He's the consultant working on the master plan for us.
Thank you, Chris. Greetings, Council, Mayor. As Chris mentioned, we're under contract with the city to develop communications master plan, not only for the traffic department, but we're also going to be looking at holistically how it supports other departments within the city. I've been doing ITS and communications design for Kinley Horn for 16 years. Developed a lot of master plans for neighboring cities. We'll go into some of that a little bit later in the presentation. You'll see this graphic up on the screen throughout my presentation, and I like it, one, because it's colorful and it kind of catches your eye, but it also tells the whole picture of why the communication system is so important for traffic networks. And you'll see me zoom into specific sections where I talk about the goals of the project. Go ahead. So I'd like to do first is start off by recapping existing conditions, kind of expanding on what Chris had mentioned. The city itself has an ATMS, or Advanced Traffic Management System, called ATMS Now. It's made by NASTEC. And this graphic, although it's kind of hard to see, shows the footprint of the current network. And I want to really focus on what you see in yellow, and that's that 900 megahertz serial-based radio that Chris was alluding to that is no longer supported and wasn't designed to carry the bandwidth to support video applications. So when you look at near-term goals, it won't support it. When you look at long-term goals, it won't support it. So it is in need of an upgrade. Currently, the system talks to roughly 105 intersections. And it's all unlicensed, and what's important about that is it means that anybody, a neighboring city or an agency or a private entity could use that same frequency and compete in the same airspace, if you will, with the technology. Go ahead. Walk you through the project process. Currently, we're in the information data collection mode, and then we're going to evaluate all that. We have a sub-consultant that we're going to utilize to do a frequency scan to identify what frequencies we need to be staying away from, what frequencies are open, and kind of lay the foundation of what we have to work with. We then transition to what's called a concept of operations, and I highlighted in green is the reason is it's the most important phase of the project. That's where we come into a half-day workshop with all the stakeholders, which I'll touch on in a little bit, and we discuss near-term goals, long-term goals. If I were king for a day, what do I want the communication system to do? How do I want it to support the traffic department? How do I want it to support first responders? How do I want it to support the IT department? And understand what goals and objectives they have so we can properly design the new communication system to sustain the city for the next 10, 20 years. We take a comprehensive look at the state of the practice. We look at what other cities are doing, what is the current technology on the market for radios. We even look at what is the current technology of the hardware that's sitting inside the traffic signal cabinet, such as the controllers, the detection technology, the surveillance cameras. And we take all this information, we wrap it up into a comprehensive master plan, which identifies needs, requirements, projects, recommendations, and funding sources to utilize as we move forward with construction of the project. We also will be developing a separate document that's geared towards a traffic management center. Currently, there is a traffic management center by definition. It's a workstation that houses the NASTEC software, and the city currently is able to look at some video. It's just limited. And so we're going to look at how we progression or expand that to a larger TMC down the road, and I'll kind of give you an example of what that looks like. And then the second phase is going to be plans, preparation, construction documents for what recommended projects that come out of the recommendations. But stakeholders are going to, everybody within the city of Louisville is in the center: public works, traffic, IT, other agencies, other departments, first responders. We also consider what our neighboring cities are doing, and those are eventually stakeholders, because the traffic system within the city of Louisville is also going to be talking with Frisco. It's also going to be talking with other neighboring cities. So we purposely bring them into the mix and into the decision-making process, as well as regional partners such as TxDOT, Denton County Transit Authority, NTTA, and North Central Texas Council of Governments. Go ahead. There are 12 actually project goals that have been established, but I wanted to really focus on what I feel are the 6 most important goals, and this is consistent goals that you'll see with any master plan that's out there. Go ahead. Improve safety and mobility. We want to be able to have a communication system that's robust and is able to support signal operations, incident management, weather-related events, and be able to take all the data and information that we're collecting within the signal network and be able to bring that all back to a centralized location so we can utilize it to help us be more efficient. Which kind of leads me into the second goal, is increase agency efficiency. We have so many toolboxes that are sitting inside that signal cabinet, and it's all Ethernet-based computer equipment: your controller, your video detection, your Bluetooth readers, your cameras, your pan-tilt zoom cameras at your intersection. That is all information and data that we can use as a tool in our day-to-day operations, and we want to make sure that we're giving the city the resources to be able to use that in its best use. Travel information. I'm sure everybody's aware of DMSs that you see on TxDOT's freeways, and some cities also have DMS boards on arterial roadway networks. Everybody has one of these too. And traffic system, modern day traffic systems, the goal is how do we also provide the information to the users through their cell phone or through their vehicle. And so one of the things that we're going to be looking at is third-party applications. And I know Chris and the city is already looking at Waze and Connected Citizens program and designing a communication system that allows for that information to be shared outside of the confines of the city of Louisville. Third-party applications, an example would be City of Frisco has a partnership with TSS to where they're able to get the data coming off of the traffic controllers in the field, send that to the cloud, and it shows up in an Audi driving along the street, and a heads-up display. You're able to see when the signal's about to turn red, when it's about to turn yellow. If it's green, then you're good under current speed. That's where technology is heading. It's all in the connected vehicles, autonomous vehicle realm. But we want to make sure that the city's communication system in the future can support that application and technology. Communications architecture. At the end of the day, we have to have a system that supports not only the near term, but also the long-term bandwidth needs for the city. It also supports the TMC. It also supports EOC operations. And so right now, the system isn't reliable. It isn't scalable. It isn't redundant. And that's what we're going to come in and recommend fixes for, to where we've fixed or we've addressed all these issues that make for a robust communications architecture. Traffic Management Center, this is an example of how we look at some near-term upgrades where it's a bigger video wall, maybe it's a couple workstations, it's more of a low-cost upgrade, to looking towards the future of, is it a TMC EOC type of operations where your traffic department is sitting next to your first responders, is sitting next to your public works department, and they're seeing everything coming in one location. If there's a severe weather incident or an emergency, everybody can be in one place to discuss how do we respond to that incident, how do we send the right resources, how do we clear an incident, and improve efficiency in how we address our city duties. Go ahead. And finally, incident event management. Cameras in the roadway, identifying an accident early, being able to see the accident, see what resources need to be sent. That's another application. Event management, using the system to assist in special events that are programmed. And how do we dispatch the right people? How do we have interagency cooperation? All of that comes into how that communication system is designed, how the information is disseminated to all parties. With that, I appreciate your time, and I'll turn it back over to Chris to wrap things up.
Can you build one more slide?
Oh, sorry about that. These are just recent examples. The one on the right happens to be the City of Frisco's communication architecture map that came out of the master plan phase. And so you'll see documentation similar to this in the report that identifies how the system's laid out. This bottom left quadrant looked at the bandwidth allocation and how bandwidth was spread across the network. And then the upper left-hand quadrant talked about the quantities of equipment that were out there, and that was all tied to the communication system. And then this is a sample report cover that we did for City of Irving. Similar project. You guys are in a life cycle amongst other cities to where the communication system that was put in 10, 15 years ago is now having to be replaced and upgraded with better technology to support current bandwidth needs and future bandwidth needs. Chris?
So if you didn't know what a traffic network is, I'm sure you're excited now. When we look at this, I wanted to kind of go over where we're at as far as phases and funding and what we're looking at. This year, 17-18 fiscal year, this is what we're going through. This first portion is the creation, the development of this master communication plan, as well as the traffic plan. $250,000 is what was funded in the capital project for this fiscal year. If you look at next year, what's proposed in the budget, and the base is $468,000 on the take plan, and what that really addresses, that's going to be the majority of the backhaul, right? And so when we're saying the backhaul, how are we reaching out to all of these intersections, if you will? Think of it as a water main, if you will. And then the last phase, which you see, that's going to be the largest request as far as funding, but it's also addressing the largest portion, in the sense that this goes out to all of those 170 intersections. As Darren just alluded to, when you look at the amount of technology that you're plugging into each intersection, it's not only when you're looking at the devices now, well, we have probably six to seven devices we're plugging in, but you also want to look at the future. 10 years from now, obviously we want to try and future-proof, if you will, for any type of expanded operations that we're having, whether it's traffic, public safety, or whatnot. And finally, in that phase, what we're also doing, that's where we come together and we build this traffic wall, or video wall, if you will, in the traffic management center. Long-term goals, again, EOC, basement, potentially opportunities there, but again, that would be part of the master plan. So with that, total project, we're looking at roughly $1.4 million. I would like to open it up if you guys have any questions for us.
I just have one question. When you talk about building, equipment and systems for the long term. With technology changing, how long do you estimate that long term is? Is that 10 years or what's the number?
Generally speaking, the radio equipment has a 10-year shelf life in terms of technology and support. But in terms of the bandwidth that we designed the system for, we're purposely allocating enough bandwidth at the traffic cabinet to where, as controllers need to be replaced or as detection systems become obsolete, we can still replace that equipment without having to necessarily replace the radio link that's been put there. So you may get a controller failure or a controller upgrade, and that's a lower cost item per se than having to replace your whole entire communications network. But generally speaking, it's about 10 years.
So council, that 468,000 is in your proposed base budget for this funding?
This is my ignorance. We have people staring at our lights and traffic here today. I mean, I'm seeing this traffic management system, this TLA. So we have people sitting there looking for red lines on Google in a dark room in the IT department now?
No, it's not that fun. So what we have, and so this network is really currently outside of the city's network. So think of it as two separate networks. But Ron's over here, he can probably speak more to this point, but I do know that they have the ability currently, let's say that at a few of these intersections, if you wanted to physically look at it, right, or from a traffic engineering standpoint, with David speaking, if you wanted to physically look at it to try and look at timing, things of that nature, so you can see what the traffic, is happening, we do have the ability to do it, and I would say a handful, maybe 8 locations, right? Furthermore, what it allows them to do, if you did need to change something as far as programming at a traffic light, in lieu of physically driving there, connecting via serial cable, Ethernet, whatever, to my laptop, I can do that remotely. Those are really the two means in which the current network aids the traffic department. Did I miss anything there?
I think you get the majority of it.
I see a picture of NORAD.
Well, and that's where cities are moving. I mean, in the past, you have direct communication just to your controllers. So you can see what the controller is doing in your office. You can see the timing patterns, the cycle links. You can adjust offsets and what have you. They have the ability to see some detection cameras, some video, but the current bandwidth right now doesn't allow them to do anything with it. And so what we're trying to do is increase that bandwidth to where they can do the remote video sharing. They can assess the signals faster. They can actually do performance metrics. And a lot of it is communications, but we're also looking at their software. Do we need to look at upgrades to their software to allow them to open up that toolbox more? And if they can do that, then you're best using the communications that you've spent money on. And
I was confused by the picture of NORAD with a bunch of people sitting around. I would expect an algorithm.
City of Frisco.
I would expect an algorithm to take care of that and not have people micromanaging the lights.
And in most cases,
except that one guy that watches me for all the reds.
The beauty of the systems now is a lot of it is behind the scenes. You get alerts, you get alarms if something is not right. And so the picture that I was showing there, half the time you go and walk into City of Frisco's TMC or EOC, there's no one sitting there. It's really populated when there's a special event or there's a weather-related incident. Otherwise, the system's designed to run behind the scenes, but as a traffic engineer, they want to be able to harness all that data and then know what to do with it so it makes their jobs more efficient. It makes the field technicians' jobs more efficient.
So help me out, Chris.
Yes, sir.
I'm not opposed to this, don't think I'm going down that route, but I'm not sure it's the whole answer. How many intersections right now use video detection instead of a loop?
90+%, right?
We're close to, I'd say 90%. We've been in a program where we've been changing them out on a regular basis.
The goal is they're going to be 100% in the next year or so, probably.
Okay, so that's the first question I had, is that as long as we're sitting on a loop, you're not going to fix the problem remotely.
Correct.
So The second question is that the video detection cameras aren't designed to pick up high resolution. They're designed to pick up blobs and square and determine how many blobs have arrived.
Correct.
So what are we really gonna see? I mean, I get the bandwidth, and yet at the same time, I'm talking about, I'm showing, you know, a war room with screens that are not gonna have these kind of pictures.
And to answer that question, the detection technologies they have right now is about 5 to 8 years old. On the, you know, the ones that have been out there the longest.
Right.
That's analog-based video. The new systems are digital 1080p resolution detection cameras.
Okay.
But we're also recommending that we are putting PTZ cameras at critical intersections, whether they're the high crash rate intersections or they're majors, to where there is a pan tilt zoom camera that the main purpose there is incident management or diagnostics of the intersections. Some of the cameras do vehicle detection counts, to where instead of having to hire a firm or go out there and put tubes down to do traffic counts, you can actually have the camera do that for you.
Okay, so we're going right down the path I want to go down, which is out of the 90% that's done and soon to 100%, how many will be 1080p?
What's your percentage right now that are probably within the last 2 to 3 years?
That I can't tell you.
Okay.
We can get you that number.
And how many will be PTZ?
It's all gonna depend on the funding and where they're located, but on average, a city of this size has at least 20 to 30 that get deployed within the city limits.
And these are high traffic volume
Correct.
locations.
And so one of the recommendations is gonna be to support incident management, that there's an installation of roughly 20 to 30 PTZ cameras. That's a new device. It currently isn't out there now.
Because the whole point here that I'm making is that this is the back side, but without the front side, it's a great backside.
No, I would concur. However, being devil's advocate, you have to have the backside.
Yes, but so that's where the question is, where are we going? So we've been presented with the backside, but we're not being told what's happening with the front side. So, and it takes the two of them to tango.
Yes, sir. No, agreed. With respect to the communication plan, the master plan, the traffic plan that we're talking about, the creation of it, right? So we don't have it fully assembled. And those are items that we do want to address. Those are, when we're talking about the build out of the network or future-proofing it, if you will. Some of the items, so let's say, and I don't want to steer this the wrong way, but for instance, let's say public safety had a use case, right? And their use case was wanting to do video analytics for some reason, right? To be able to, whatever,
Is there a high
search for a
incidence
vehicle.
of rear-ended accidents at a location?
Right.
Okay.
And so in that scenario, we would not utilize the cameras that are currently there for that use case. You would look at having a separate camera altogether that would be utilized for public safety for that particular purpose. And so in doing that, you don't compromise, you know, what we're trying to do as far as the goal number one, which is the traffic portion of the network.
Okay. I think at some point, I'd like to hear, you know, what finishes, something about the expectations and plans to finish out, you know, the other side of the system.
No, completely understood. And I believe we might have some help.
I would just say that we are in the process, and I would say it's probably more like 8 to 10 years ago, they transitioned from the old analog cameras to digital cameras. Not 1080p, 1080p is probably the last 3 or 4 years, but those digital cameras are much more crisp than what you're describing. You know, you can make out make, model, year, license plate number on cars through that detection. We're not capturing that video. It's not, there's just so much of it that we cannot capture and contain that data. But if you pull it up on screen, you can see good, you know, image quality on cameras that are probably 6 to 8 years old, and then the newer ones are even better than that. We are budgeting in our public services budget to finish out not only the remaining 10%, but also to begin changing out those old, outdated analog cameras that are not, you know, they're equipment that fails. if they're 10 to 12 years old, they're probably needing replacement. So we are budgeting that on an annual basis on our infrastructure maintenance for replacing those pieces through our traffic budget.
So one last question that's a little unfair because it's just me, but why do I seem to run into so many intersections that are still on a loop?
I'm not sure where in particular. I'd be happy to look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Because I'm looking up at the arm to see the camera and it's not there. I'm looking at the ground and the loop is there.
What you'll find is there are a lot of we didn't remove any loops, right? So we disconnected.
Sure.
So the loops are still on the ground. You'll still see pavement cuts.
Oh, but I'm looking up first to find the camera that's not there.
I'd be happy to look at where in particular you're looking at and where in our plan it is to upgrade that.
Do you have like a map that shows what's in and out of this?
We can, I don't have one readily available, but we can pull them together.
Sure. Okay.
To kind of dovetail on that, as part of the existing conditions, right now, what we're doing is doing a complete inventory. So every intersection, we're gonna know make and model of the equipment that's there, what age it is in the system, and that's part of that master plan, because again, we're laying the foundation communications wise, but in order to do that, we have to understand what we're working with, and then where the city wants to go in 5-10 years with the equipment there. And so and those are specific projects that we recommend and say, okay, to support this initiative, these are things that have to be upgraded, or these are things that can remain the same. And so it's just, and as we get into the details of the master plan, what you're asking is laid out comprehensively, step by step, of saying, okay, if you want to have this TMC look like City of Frisco's, which I'm not saying that's where we're going, but this is what it takes to get there. Do you see yourself there in reality? The answer is no. We're somewhere over here. Because at the end of the day, we want the project to be what's best useful for y'all and what has the biggest benefit for y'all, not necessarily which has all the bells and whistles.
Okay. Like I said, when I started, I'm not against this. I hate to build it and then think, great, I've, put a Ferrari engine in a Volkswagen.
No, very, very good question. I really believe that a lot of the questions that you're answering or what you're bringing up, that's the whole purpose of us doing this study, right? To really assimilate all that information. And then when you ask me this time next year, I would be in a much better position to say this is exactly what we're doing. These are the, but currently we're going through that assessment. And as far as that phase, the phase that we're in now, we're looking at roughly 4 to 5 months in order to complete that. So by the end of the calendar year, we should really be able to field all of those questions that you have for us with certainty as to what we're putting where.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, City Manager, where do you want to go with this?
This is just a report, Mayor and Council, so as we progress, we'll bring back additional updates for you.
Okay. Need to do the deal along Timber Creek Drive?
Yes, that would be our next presentation, and Claire's going to share some information with you. Hold on, let me make sure. That's not Louisville.
No, it's not. Eric, where do I hit the map?
It's pretty down. Now look at it. Where is this?
Timber Creek.
Someplace ready to plan. Someplace I want to be.
Okay, Mayor and Council. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the future ownership of the Timber Creek property that is between 121 and, I don't have that. Where am I? Right here. From this area to this area. So, going back to what Donna said, that was not a picture of Timber Creek currently. I think that was a picture of something out of Austin.
We don't like it though.
We do like it, but the idea was to put something out there that showed a passive use of the property, of a creek side that could be used with trails and allowing for the greenery to stay in there. This property that we're talking about currently is owned by the Huffines. The Huffines development is right down here. The question we have today is whether or not, if they were to donate this property to you, would you want to accept the property? Or, and actually, when we get to the very last slide, it's actually bifurcated. They are interested in getting rid of all of their creek land. I think staff is prepared right now, having looked at this area and this area, that we're okay with taking ownership of it. We still need to do a little bit more assessment down here. There's a levee right here that might be failing, and we want to make sure that it's in good shape before we take it. Not failing like the levees are failing, but failing as in it's holding it right now, but 5 to 10 years we may have to do improvements on it. So if we were to take ownership of that, we would want to make sure that we had some type of maintenance agreement in place with the Huffines development. So I wanted to go back in time to start where we began.
I remember this picture.
You remember
when it
this
first
picture?
showed up.
Yeah. So this was about 2007 and 2008. And this was what the Huffines had presented to us. It was their vision for the future of this creek area. Okay? I don't know how many of you were here at that time and who were
Wait
not.
for the sailboat. Here it comes.
There we go.
There it
There's a
is.
sailboat as well. Yeah. So this was their original plan. So based on this and based on their multifamily development plans that they had down there, they also wanted to get a TIF in place. And so the city worked with them to put a TERS on the ground. And this, as you can see, is a very strange little leg that we pull out, but the intent of that is to be able to also be able to put money back in. If they were to make these improvements, we could then reimburse them on the back end through the TERS increment. If you remember, the way TERSs work are, when we put this in place, you basically lock the value of the land, and then as that grows, any increment over that gets put back into the TERS. So it doesn't go to general fund, it goes back into the TERS here. It goes to pay off infrastructure costs that were done on the front end, and it incentivizes developers to invest more on the front end. So what that does, though, it does not obligate the developer to build exactly, do all of that beautiful creekscaping that they were planning to do. What it does is just say, if you're to do this, we have a funding mechanism for you. So what has been done on the property, is minimal. So as you can see, and actually the better view is from the map, and that's why I was pulling it up. So as you can see, they've let it pretty much continue as is. And this area, from engineering's point of view, is some of the worst silting we've got in the city on Timber Creek. It is their obligation to maintain it. I will say we have not been actively enforcing, dredging of that. That is a huge number, and I'll go through that cost of having to dredge that out. And then getting down into here to clean out trash, it is a huge steep bank, and so it is very difficult for someone to go through that. The other thing that's interesting is they did try to make improvements. And you can see this is the beginning of that boardwalk that was in that picture. And they had some plants, these were the palm trees they had planted along to kind of create this area. The only problem with that, they ended up deciding they weren't going to go forward with that, was because every time it rained, silt would wash ashore to this, and it would cover it, and they'd have to wash it down every time it rained. And so this became an unmanageable maintenance problem for them. And so they basically decided they were going to scrap the deal. So the next thing we learn is, let me go back to my PowerPoint. The next thing we learn is that this area that we know they've been passively holding on to, we still have it as part of the TERS, so there's never been a decision point that they're completely scrapping it. We hear that the entire land that they own by the creek is under contract with the Retail Connection. The Retail Connection has just bought the Target Center right here. The Retail Connection, also, we find out that they're under contract because the Retail Connection is talking to us about removal of every tree in here except for 11 protected trees.
Which is really how we found out about it.
That's how we found out about it.
So, under our current code though, well, let me go through, I'll go through what currently is the issue. And I think it's a valid issue. This is the view from I-35 to the Target Center. Their sign is right over here behind this tree. You can't see anything. This is where that building was just demolished. Over here, again, no visibility. Here you've got the jug handles are coming off of the freeway here, and this is Hebron down over here, and so you can see you can barely see over here. Again, that's your view from Hebron. And so this is looking away from the center, but all of these trees would pretty much be removed. So the question is, you're probably asking, well, can they remove all those trees? And actually the answer is yes. Under our current code, you only have to maintain your protected trees. These are almost all unprotected trees under our code, so only the ones in green, I think there are 11 of them, are what they're saving. And in fact, the interesting thing is they're buying that whole swath of land from the Huffines because Huffines' deal point for them was, we don't want it, it's a liability for us, we don't want it. We're only willing to give you this if you buy the entire swath, but all they care about is this removal of this. So they have no plans at all for the future on the others.
Did you say entire swamp or swamp?
Swath. So we called Huffines when we found out and just basically said, hey, I thought we were partners on this. What are the plans here? Are you really selling the property? Because we have some concerns. And when we expressed our concerns, they said, well, you know what? I think there's a win-win situation here. And the win-win situation is, what if we donate the property to the city? So the city gets to have all of this property if you guys are willing to work some middle ground with them. So they would maintain this property. They would get some removal of trees so that they could have visibility, but it wouldn't be a clear cutting of the property. We thought that was a good idea to start conversation, and we're actually here today to ask for your official go forward with this plan if you're interested in it. But basically, we would enter into an agreement with Retail Connection to remove some of the trees. They would still have to do soil erosion steps. And what that would do is give the city a little bit more control over what's going to happen. I added this slide in here because I wanted to talk about erosion control. So even though we don't have tree protection on these unprotected trees, and they have the right to remove that, what we do have is stormwater regulations that tell you that you can't put add silt or add material into your waterways. And so we've asked them to turn in a soil erosion control plan, and I wanted David to kind of talk about what we're requiring, and so that you realize that this is being required whether they own the property or we own the property. We need to see this at least.
Right, and actually we do this almost every time that we do a capital project. Because of the size of the area that we're talking about, in order to go in there with any kind of construction activity, and especially when you're removing vegetation and exposing soil to erosion, you have to do what's called an SW3P, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan. There's a variety of different things you can use to prevent erosion. On a residential lot, you might use silt fence, or even a small commercial site. Obviously, silt fence probably isn't going to do much in a creek of this size. So, in general, whoever is going to do construction out here is going to have to do one of these plans, and it's going to have to be very detailed with regard to what erosion control measures are being used. In a creek like this, you're probably, what we're talking about mainly, well, actually you're talking about during the construction, and then also how you're going to establish, that soil again permanently at the end of the project. So they'll go through this exercise of showing what they're going to do in the interim, which in a case like this is going to be probably some pretty significant temporary structures to hold back that silt from going downstream. And then they're going to have to be able to explain how they're going to permanently solve the erosion problem on these banks once they've been cleared of vegetation. They'll have to commit to planting, vegetation, grass cover, ground cover, shrubs, trees, whatever the case may be, long-term. But before those actually take root and take place and stop the erosion, there has to be interim measures. Sometimes those are what we call rock dams, where periodically put rock riprap in place to kind of hold silt back so it can be easily cleaned out rather than going downstream, things of that nature until that vegetation is established again. And sometimes, in some extreme cases, it may require some riprap similar to what we did out there on Regency Drive. Permanent solution.
So with this, what we provided them as a list of, we think is probably the cheapest way for them to get their erosion control than having to do riprap and things like that. I will say that right now we're currently in discussions with the Retail Connection, and they have expressed concern because I think their original thought was they were gonna tear down cut all the trees, mulch them in place, and leave the mulch there, which was a huge problem for us because that would just eventually end up in the bottom and create a bigger problem. So I think the cost of having them removed off-site is more expensive for them, the trees, but at the same time, this is a win-win because now they don't have to pay for this property, it's donated to us, and we would allow them to take that money and put it towards actually doing this the right way. So this is what the city has proposed. Generally, this is kind of a, we had this on a very short timeline to turn this over to them, so before we took it to council tonight. So our idea, and I'll kind of talk to this was produced by Stacy and her team, so we had the Leela folks go down there and kind of figure out if there are any trees that we really wanted to save other than the protected trees, as well as what do we think from an erosion control, and then also from a planting idea on the side. So what our thoughts, and this is our starting point with them, is that it's okay to clear these areas because these are the view sheds, the primary view sheds of the center. This is obviously the back of a building. These two buildings are up here, although they will probably go with phase 2 of I-10, but I-10, oh my God, I grew up in Houston, and that came out of my mouth. I-35. I just got back from Houston this weekend. So the idea also is to have the bottom part, the trees on the bottom are not very tall, and they are also the best solution to not having erosion at the bottom, and so to leave all the trees at the very bottom of the bank. So if you remember from some of the pictures I just showed you, there is kind of like a little island that goes down the middle. Leave those trees in the middle because they're not creating a view shed issue. There's also some American elm and dogwood over here that we thought would be a nice clustering of trees, and then through here we can thin and work with you on taller trees to remove. But we want to have that center do well economically, but we do want to have a more nuanced approach in that. And then with these cleared areas, again, you're going to have to do the matting, for the soil, the erosion control. But here, where we actually provided them, if the city's going to own this, we'd like you to plant with not just any grass. We want you to plant with prairie grasses and prairie plants that will be established very easily and thrive in those areas.
When you say clear, you mean clear?
Clear, yes, so these areas would be cleared of all trees. So, because we understand that they needed to have that view. Now, the reason why staff is interested in having this property for the short term, obviously, is having greater flexibility with this property later on. If we want to amenitize this later, if we want to put trails on this later, if we want to do if we want to do erosion control projects on this, we really don't want to have all this removed and not have that flexibility of having a shaded path and things like that.
Or to do a bunch of work and then have it all fade away.
Right. And then the other thing, but we also have some long-term interest in this too, and the reason why we have long-term interest, if you can see, all of this green is city-owned property. So what we do have is a hodgepodge of ownership along our creeks, which has made it difficult, I think, for predictability in the future on maintenance of these. So, here the city's pretty in control of this. We've got a lot of ownership down this, but then we have nothing over here. So the idea is if we were to take ownership of this area, we would have pretty good contiguous property. Don't touch it.
we'd have good contiguous property ownership down up along this and underneath I-35. The current maintenance that we're working right now, and Keith can add more if he wants, but if he has anything else to add, but we're pretty passively, for a lot of this creek area, especially down in here, we're pretty passive about our maintenance on there. We're not getting into the creeks every day and making sure things are getting pulled out. I don't think we have the manpower to be able to do that. This area over here that we're about to take on, if you are interested in taking it on, would have the same amount of maintenance that we in the short term. But in the long term, the interest in this area, because of the silting issue, is that we actually have in our stormwater utility plan from 10 to 15 years out, the last two items were actually pinpointing this area as one of our top 18 projects that we needed to focus on. It actually ended in 18, that's all we had on that list. So we've presented this to you guys before. And this number right here, so let's say we were gonna do channel dredging east of I-35, it's $7 million. So technically speaking, if the owner, we needed the owner to get compliance and do a full dredging, they're gonna have to be out $7 million at that point. I think we're prepared to do it. This does not include, this will not include the cost of property acquisition if we later needed to buy it. So if it's donated to us, we already have that, that's a cost we won't have to pay later on.
So really anything they're gonna do now is just really temporary.
Right.
That's all it is.
So these are the tracts of land that we're specifically talking about. Phase one, which is what we're really talking about today, are these that the Retail Connection wants to remove stuff here. But Huffines has told us if I'm going to donate property to you, we don't want it to be a jack-o'-lantern, right? We don't want to have a giant hole left out in the middle, and you guys don't take this. They did say we are very interested in talking about giving everything to the city, and I said, I'll ask council if they're even interested in me looking at this. But I gotta do some more exploration out there to figure out what those liabilities are. But under here, this is in front of the Honda dealership. The Honda dealership currently has a maintenance agreement with the Huffines. If we were to take ownership there, we'll assign that maintenance agreement to the city of Louisville. We would ask for the same thing from Retail Connection. So if we were to take ownership of this and allow them to get on our property, we need to have a maintenance agreement as well in place with them. So what I'm asking council today is, we'll call this phase one, is these 4 lots. Are you interested if Huffines is willing to donate to us, accepting that property? Because if so, we will then paper the deal and bring it back to you.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're not polling or voting, we're just getting direction.
Yeah,
I'm
we
interested.
generally interested. Okay.
Yes.
And then the same thing, are you interested in staff exploring further on the remainder of it?
Yes.
It was, because the description was between here and here.
So I'll ask right now, Donna, are we buying property?
No, Mayor, they're giving it to us. I like gifts.
That was all I need to know. There's no guarantee. We're still working through it with Retail Connection and with the Huffines, but at least having that direction, I can give them a statement from council, generally speaking, that we should move forward to bring it back for actual approval. So thank you.
And really, any of that is gonna be based on getting a maintenance agreement.
Yeah.
If we do that, what's the clawback? I mean, what if they just take a brush hog down there and take everything out? Oops.
Well, if it's our property, are you talking about if the scenario is it's our property?
Yeah.
Well, then
They're violating city ordinance.
and
Yeah, but what's the hand slap?
well, it's trespass and damage to our property at that point.
David, what would they have to do that to restore erosion
yeah, there's-
control?
Oh, yeah, so there's also a violation of our
Obviously,
city
the remedy
ordinances
would
for
be
storm.
establishing erosion control,
Yeah.
which would be a combination of items.
Could be very costly for them.
So it's a $2,000 a day violation if they were not to do erosion control protection measures.
I would love to make sure that gets communicated when, and if this all becomes something.
We haven't heard from Retail Connection.
Yes, we
here
did not.
today.
So the last correspondence I had with them, I basically explained, this is the scenario if you own it, this is the scenario if we own it, because I think they were not understanding those erosion control measures were required no matter what. So they were saying, tell me this deal that you're offering us really seems like a lose for us because you're requiring all these things for erosion control on top of the tree saving. And I was like, no, you're not understanding. You're required to do this both ways. So they said they were gonna price out the extra costs, but we haven't heard back from them on that. So, okay.
Mayor, that's all we had for workshop.
Okay, so let's go back out in open session and.
We are,
oh,
we have executive session.
Oh, we didn't have one, okay.
Yes, that we have.
Okay, we'll now go into executive session, and everybody that's not part of the executive session needs to step out. Okay. And you'll figure it out.
Hey, Julie?
Is there any action to be taken?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.